conversation with my parents the other day. We are going over life after college now that I have a job. And my dad was like, yeah, those first few years are always a grind. You just have to put your head down and work. And, obviously I'm going to agree with my parents and go ahead and say, yeah, of course, I'm just going to work as hard as I can to try and get ahead as much as possible. But I really just wasn't connecting with what he was saying. It's, the scale of it all, the grind he was talking about from back in his day is not the grind that we're experiencing now. The realities are fundamentally different. It's that disconnect that I want to talk about today. The feeling that in your chest when your rent bill is, I don't want to say significantly higher than what you thought it would be, but you look at it and your paycheck doesn't quite add up. The quiet panic that you've had for the 50th time today, the deferred dream of that home that you're looking down the road and thinking about buying, the car that you want to get. It's not adulting. It's not that adulting is hard, really. It's just the overall general collective of it all. It's brutal. The economic shifts that are happening today are brutal. So let's get into it. Let's look at 3 Everest-sized mountains that the job market, the housing mirage, and the debt crisis has in front of us. Let's try to understand why, by the numbers, life is generally so much harder than it was yesterday. Let's start where it begins for so many of us, leaving school and entering the workforce. The promise is clear. You get a degree, you work hard, and you'll get a job that sets you on the right path. But the first reality check is the entry-level phase. For me, I applied to around 1,086 positions before I finally got the job that I have today. Now, if that sounds absurd to you, that's because it is. I did not think that when I was a freshman in college that I'd have to apply to 1,086 jobs before I'm able to get somebody to hire me. And it's not like I slacked off in college either. I worked as hard as I can, applied to a bunch of internships, and I was very lucky to find myself with 4 internships before I graduated college. The problem is that 4 internships before graduating college should come out with a solid understanding of how the realities of my career path should work. Understanding, the principles of data science and being able to properly program and build projects and work with teams. That stuff I had to build over time in my internships. The thing is that today, that doesn't necessarily matter as much as it once did. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it doesn't matter. All that experience does help. But when coming to myself, 1,086 applications later, and I finally get a job, I wonder what it's like for those who have years of experience and still can't get a job. It's brutal out there. I mean, the entry-level job scene, 60% of these so-called entry-level jobs require 3 or more years of experience. That is insane. I mean, you think about that. Experience is supposed to, help you build up your skills, and an entry-level job is supposed to help you get that experience. But if you can't get the experience because the entry-level job is requiring 3 to 5 years of experience, you'll never get the entry-level job. It doesn't really make any sense anymore, does it? It's just an endless loop that continues on forever and forever until hopefully someone comes along and says, here, after years of unemployment, you finally get a job. And then there's wage stagnation. Adjusted for inflation, young graduates as myself today, their dollar doesn't go as far as it once did. I mean, the cost of eggs are going up, milk's going up. Thankfully, for the most part, most people are able to, save a little bit of money. While it may not be, hundreds of thousands of dollars, you may be able to save more by going to Costco and buying in bulk. However, when the general sentiment is that eggs are, just the cost of food in general is significantly more, pairing that with the fact that wages are not adjusting to inflation, it's a bit brutal. I mean, it's more than a bit brutal. The thing is that when it comes to wage stagnation in today's society, when you're looking around and you see everybody with all of these brand new cars, some people putting it on, a $50,000 car on, 126 months of loan payments, or however long, or 72 months of $1,000 a month. And that includes the interest. I don't know who's paying that. Certainly isn't myself. But you look around and you see all of this buying and purchasing happening, but the wages are a bit stagnant. So how are people getting this money? How are people able to afford buying homes and buying, cars and buying all these, just even the daily things, the food, the water, the utility bills? How are they affording it? So that brings me to debt. Debt today has never been higher. I mean, we look at the national debt, we're at $38 trillion. I can't even comprehend of a number that big. I mean, we say it all the time, right? We say, hey, $38 trillion national debt, the debt's just increasing, it is what it is. But look at a billionaire. It would take you, 200 plus years to become a billionaire if you worked every single day and making like $10,000 a day. How are we supposed to pay off a $38 trillion national debt? Well, we could inflate it away by printing more money and hoping that solves the problem. The problem is that if the government does that, it makes our dollar worthless, which puts us in another endless loop. And it seems like that's the way that we're going down. However, I do have a bit of optimism. Even with the wage stagnation, even with the national debt and the lack of jobs, ghost jobs and the entry-level job market being so terrible, there is a bit of hope. Because nowadays, people are making money in more obscure ways than ever. Or at least in the ways that you wouldn't traditionally think of. There are some people here on YouTube that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, like Mr. Beast. I mean, he probably makes a lot more than that. There are others who are doing day trading. While risky, very risky, they make it work. Some people sell products online, but whatever it is, they found a way. And today, we need to figure out ways in order to sort of move off of the traditional path and head into a path that is a little more vague. Because that's what it takes nowadays to get ahead. While yes, the traditional job market is not so great and it requires a lot of years of experience in order to just get your foot in the door, maybe it's worth it to do freelance projects. Maybe it's worth it to hit up a small business and say, hey, is there any software work that you guys need to do? Maybe it's worth it for when it comes to wage stagflation to ask for a raise. And I know that may seem obscure, as of right now, but, it might help in the long term. When it comes to the national debt, well, if the country spends another $11 billion on a supercarrier, then, well, there's not really much we can do about that. But we can lower our own household debt. We can try to pay off our credit card bills every single month. We can try to limit the spending maybe